You may have heard of the exposure triangle, where aperture, shutter speed and ISO come together to create the perfect exposure. But have you ever heard of the composition triangle? No, I thought not, mainly due to the fact that I've just made it up, but I think I'm onto something. When we search for ways in which we can improve our composition skills, we're often bombarded by lots of tips, tricks and hacks. If you place your subject on the rule of thirds, your composition is going to be better. If you use leading lines, your composition is going to be better. I believe that to truly understand how to make our photographs look better, we first of all have to get to grips with what composition is, and secondly, the effect it has on the aesthetic appearance of our pictures. Instead of throwing random rules at our photographs, hoping that they'll come out all right, we really need to understand why these techniques work in the first place. Composition plays three really important roles in the making of a photograph, and that is where my composition triangle comes in. In this video, I'm going to reveal all. Don't worry, I'm not going to be taking any clothes off. I'm going to be sharing what these three main roles are and show you that when they work together in harmony, then everything just seems to fall into place. The first role of composition is to provide depth to our photographs. If I was to take a picture of this tower on the hill behind me here from this exact position, then yes, the subject would stand out, but I would go as far as saying it just looks a bit flat and boring. That's because when we take a photograph, we are effectively flattening the perspective into a two-dimensional image. So composition's role is to reapply that illusion of depth and make it look like the three-dimensional scene we saw when we took the photograph in the first place. One of the best ways to reapply this illusion of depth in our photographs is to separate our scene out into a series of layers of foreground, midground and background. I've come to the other side of the tower here and I've found this dead, decaying stump, which I've decided to place in the foreground of my scene. I'm also including more of the trees surrounding the tower in the background as well. Separating it out into these three distinct layers is not only giving us more interest and stuff to look at, it's also making our scene look more three-dimensional instead of just that flat two-dimensional tower on a hill. The second role of composition, and the second point on our composition triangle, is direction. Composition directs our viewer's eye where we as the photographer want them to look within the scene. I found another composition of the tower. This time I've got this footpath leading from the foreground of the frame, taking you through all of the layers of the shot up towards the tower on the hill itself. And just to add a bit more mid-ground interest, I've included this tree on the right-hand side of the frame. And note the direction of the branches, or at least the main branches that you can see in the shot. They're all leading across to the left and over towards the tower. So we're almost creating this circle for the eye to follow within the middle of the photograph, never really leaving the frame and always coming back to the main focal point of the tower itself. As well as using leading lines, you can also utilise what I like to call visual stepping stones, elements that punctuate your scene, leading the eye from the foreground through the layers of the photograph to your subject. The third role of composition in our photographs is to provide balance, finding equilibrium between all of the elements within your frame. I've come round to the other side of the tower this time and I've found what I think is my favourite composition so far. We've got this broken down branch and this pile of twigs in the foreground. Then your eye hops to the tree trunk in the midground and its branches are stretching across the top of the frame, framing the tower, which is sitting proudly on the hill in the background. In order to balance these three simple elements within the frame of my photograph, I've decided to stagger their position ever so slightly, starting off with this pile of branches and twigs which is filling the bottom left-hand corner of the frame. Then our eye jumps to the tree trunk in the midground, but this time it's over on the right-hand side. And then our eye jumps to the tower on the hill in the background, which I've placed pretty much dead centrally. Instead of our eyes zipping through one direct line through the frame, it's having to jump from one side to the other. It's still carrying on through the depth because we can see that difference in the perspective between the elements, but it's just having the effect of slowing your eye down and therefore making you look at the photograph for longer. I've also tried to separate out the layers in this photograph, making sure that nothing overlaps, becomes too overcomplicated, or flattens any depth that I've created. And I've done that by utilising the negative space of the grass and the sky to separate out each individual element distinctly from each other. I've also utilised the branches from the tree in the top left-hand corner because, let's face it, the sky's pretty boring today, just to bring your eye back down and once again create that circle around the centre of the photograph, so your eye's not tempted to leave the composition at any point. So, there you have it, the composition triangle, made up of depth, direction and balance. No matter what tip, trick or hack you pick up along the way in photography, they're all going to fit into one of these roles. So I think it's really useful to look at composition in this way, because not only does it give you more choice and free rein as a photographer, it also helps you to understand what it is you're actually doing when you're composing a photograph, rather than throwing every trick at the book at it and hoping for the best. So if you'd like to take this a step further, watch this video next and make sure that you've subscribed to the channel. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, it's bye for now.